Good day traders, this is Stefanos on behalf of Tixee, and in today's webinar we'll be giving an outlook of the market for the week of the 3rd until the 7th of October. Looking at some of the highlights for next week, in the stocks front, Nike's price target was lowered by 14 different analysts after citing inflationary pressures. Meanwhile, in the Forex front, we of course have the all-important and well-anticipated NFP report coming out next week. But first, before we get into all of that, the disclaimer. As always, please note that all of the ideas discussed in the webinar are my own opinions and do not make up for any form of investment, trading advice, neither any recommendations to buy or sell. You should always do your own research and due diligence before buying or selling any securities, financial products, or instruments, and whether you use any kind of trading strategies. Any information that relates to past performance is not indicative of future results. So, looking at stocks, first things first, we had Nike, which was, as we said, the price target was lowered by 14 different analysts. Now, this came in after Nike essentially issued a warning of a margin squeeze from markdowns overall, which essentially is what sparked worries amongst investors across the board. Now, Nike came in and said that they expected full-year gross margin to fall 200 to 250 basis points, which of course is something that is also heavily impacted from the strengthening dollar, as of course this is going to hurt exports from the US. We're currently looking at the chart of Nike, and you can pretty much see the impacts that these have been having all the way since last week essentially. So this is basically Nike closing 3 consecutive weeks in the red, and obviously we can see the kind of sentiment that there is overall around the markets and investors across the board, seeing as how, like we said, it has been lowered its price target by 14 different analysts. Now, like we said, the downgrade also came in the form of the price target, meaning that all 14 of the analysts lowered the price target. There wasn't even one, let's say, who either kept it the same or increased it ever so slightly. Now, some of those analysts were Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, UBS, and Citigroup. The median price target for Nike now sits at $115, which is down from $130 a month ago. Now, if you were tuned in for the look back, you have seen that we mentioned the lowering of the price target from Bank of America towards Apple, and it's still sitting above the current market price levels. But again, this doesn't really mean that the stock price of Nike is going to be rising or retracing back to that level. It's just essentially giving us an idea of the upside potential that the stock price can have. As you can see, it's been trading lower and lower, just like many other stocks since the beginning of the year, as you can see here as well. So for the time being, it may seem as though any bounces we get is just minor retracements before any moves further down lower. Of course, we're going to be seeing potentially some further downside with the open next week, seeing as how I expect a lot of investors and maybe retail traders digesting the news of the downgrades by 14. The lowering of the price target by 14 different analysts. So we could see potentially even further downside for Nike next week. So it would definitely be one of the stocks sitting at the top of my watch list, just to keep an eye on and see how it's reacting to those news. Moving on to Forex, like we said during the intro, we have the all anticipated events to watch out for next week, which is going to be the NFP report, or the employment data essentially from the US. Aside from that, we're also going to be having some interest rate decisions coming out of New Zealand and Australia as well. Now, the economic calendar you can very easily find by navigating to the home page of Tixee. You can then click on the News and Analysis tab, and then you can click on the economic calendar. Now you'll see some filters that you can use here in order to narrow down the data according to the ones of your preference. For the sake of the webinar, we're going to set it to next week. I'll set it to the high impact events, and you can also select the countries that you want to see the events from. So you can select the G7, and then we can also add a few other countries which are basically the ones relatively speaking, to the major currency pairs. So we're going to add New Zealand and Switzerland as well. And then you're going to be having the comprehensive list for next week. Let me just reset this one. It's important to keep note of the time zone that you have set right here, because obviously that's going to directly correlate with the timings that you can see here. And obviously you're going to be looking at the correct time as for the release of an event. So looking at Monday, we're going to have inflation data coming out of Switzerland. It's going to be at 7:30 a.m. Again, it's going to be London time. And then it's going to be followed by manufacturing data from the US later in the afternoon. Do make note of this little tooltip, as it can give you a pretty good indication as to the volatility you can expect in the hours following the release of an event. Moving on to Tuesday, like we said, we'll have one of the two interest rate decisions that we mentioned. This one is going to be from the Reserve Bank of Australia, where it is expected to raise interest rates from 2.35 to 2.85%. Later, we're going to have some production data from the Eurozone at 10 a.m. And then the first hint of employment data from the US is going to be later in the afternoon. Then moving on to Wednesday, we're going to have the second of the two interest rate decisions that we mentioned, this time from New Zealand, where it's also expected to hike rates by 50 basis points. Followed, we're going to have the trade balance figures from Germany in the regular EU session, and then some further hints from the US with regards to employment data, and then the trade balance figures towards midday, which is basically going to be released at the same time as the trade balance figures from Canada as well. And we're finishing the day off with manufacturing data from the US later in the afternoon. Then on Thursday, it's going to be two high impact events. Yet again, a trade balance figure, this time from Australia, followed by production data from Canada at 3 in the afternoon. And we come to Friday, which is essentially the day with the key event that we mentioned, which is going to be the NFP report. We will kick things off with employment data, but from Switzerland instead. And as the day unravels and we're heading into midday, that's where we're going to essentially get the release of the NFP report from the US. And as it typically happens, we're also going to have employment data from Canada also being released at the same time. So pretty much midday is definitely going to be a time to watch out for the Forex market, especially if you're trading major currency pairs or any other currencies for that matter as well. So yeah, Friday is going to be like the blockbuster kind of day for the FX market, since that's how we're going to be having employment data from Canada and the US, and also from Switzerland as well. Since we're on the economic calendar, for this one you can switch onto the medium impact events, and if we navigate over to, again, Wednesday, you can keep an eye of the day right here. Let's see here, we should be having the oil inventory report, as you can see, which is going to be released on the, as per usual, on Wednesday, and it's going to be at 3:30 UK time. Of course, you can keep it on the medium impact events if there's any other events that interest you. You can get some kind of retail sales figures, which can also be quite significant at times as well. These ones, pretty much most of the speeches are also going to be categorized under the medium impact events. But nevertheless, you have all these filters on the left hand side to play with, and basically narrow down the data or choose the data that you want to focus on when you're going to be either trading or monitoring the markets. Now, for oil, we mentioned we have the oil inventory report being released on Wednesday. But aside from that, when we were talking about oil and gold, of course, I'd be watching those commodity tools. If I'm actively trading those two commodities, I'd be definitely watching the NFP report being released on Friday as well. The reason being is because it's not expected it's only going to affect the currency markets. It, of course, can very much impact markets across the board. So we're talking the equity markets, commodity markets, even cryptocurrency markets as well. So yeah, if any of those asset classes are the ones that you're trading, even if you're not trading the currency markets directly, I think it'd still be a good idea to keep the NFP report on watch, because like I said, it's just going to probably spill over into other markets as well, and it can lead to obviously some good trading opportunities. And to finish things off, we're going to be looking at cryptos and Bitcoin specifically. There haven't been any major changes since last week. As we can see, we're looking at the weekly time frame, and this is the current weekly candlestick, and as we can see, it's pretty much trading at the exact same level as for last week. So the narrative remains the same. We're still monitoring closely these kind of levels that we have marked down on the chart. We can see that the two exponential moving averages are coming closer together, which is the 5 period and the 13 period EMA. So depending on the kind of price reaction we get from this level, it could be like something similar to this. So if we look closely, you can see the market consolidated for like 2 weeks in this very narrow range before we had sort of a fake out, and then the market's pretty much tanked. So we could see similar behavior here, in the sense that we have these two tight weeks of markets consolidating. Now, depending on the breakout, we could see a fake out towards the downside, and then it moves sharply to the upside, or vice versa, or it could even be a valid breakout and prices just keep on moving lower. So this depends on the kind of breakout that you get, and whether the retest is going to be sort of a sharp retest breaking above this level and just moving higher, or whether it's just going to linger around here before it just breaks and moves even further lower. So yeah, I'd say it's becoming quite an interesting kind of market environment in the crypto markets as well, seeing as how we're seeing this kind of repeating pattern that also occurred a couple of months ago. So yeah, if this is a market of your choice, then yeah, obviously there could be some more volatility coming in the next couple of weeks and months ahead. But yeah, there you have it. This is for us the outlook for next week markets. I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, trade safe.